Hi, and welcome to the video. This is the first video in a series that I'm calling a 1900s perspective, and I'm just going to be going over some of my games that I've played, some Grandmaster games, and just explaining my thought process behind what moves I'm making, some strategic ideas that I have in mind while playing the game. And the goal of this video series is to, if you're below 1900, to kind of give you some of an idea of what somebody slightly higher rated level than you is kind of thinking about during a game, and try to give you some ideas on some thought processes that you can use yourself. And if you're higher rated than this, again, to try to give you or a reminder of how you used to think when you were a little 1900, and a reminder of kind of the insights that and the mistakes that 1900 might be thinking when you're playing them in like a tournament game, and you need that victory and get those sweet tournament points. But without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the game. So I'm 1917 playing in the black pieces, and white El Cimeo is 2045. So already I was a little worried, just purely based off of the rating. He does have over 100 points on me, but you just gotta play your best chess and see what happens. So he opens with G3, which is not a move that I have anything specifically prepared against. Honestly, my opening knowledge is fairly limited to really 3 openings. So when somebody plays an opening that you're not familiar with, you really have one of 2 options, at least as I understand it. One is to just play like a normal setup that you normally do. I play the Sicilian, so you'll kind of see that structure from the Quo Sicilian in this game kind of take shape. But that, and then another option is to try to directly play against what your opponent's doing, and try to find the counters to each of the unknown moves. So I usually tend to lean towards the first option, where I just play a normal setup and then try to play from there, and try to honestly kind of try to like ignore what my opponent's doing as much as I can, of course. So I play the move E5 to attack the center, just to try to discourage the D5 move and place a pawn in the center, right? If an opponent's playing on the flank, you should play in the center. My opponent replies with C4. I play knight to F6. Again, looking at this deep D5 push. I could have played it the last move and brought my queen out to the center of the board, but I tend to like a little bit safer options. So moving my queen out to the center is not something that I would generally look for. And white can always, here, let me show that here. If takes and takes, white can always just play knight to F3, putting pressure on this pawn, and then let's say after a developing move, bring the bishop to the diagonal and threaten to move the knight away and attack my queen. So this is just something that I'm trying to avoid. Again, just playing a little bit safer. So I play knight to F6. He develops the bishop. I play C4. I'm pretty much just going for a Quo Sicilian type structure with this pawn trio. And the downside to this pawn structure is this dark square bishop is going to be kind of trapped. A lot of times you see the Fincado come out. However, in this game, I decided to not go for G6 and bishop G7. I went for bishop to E7 instead, as you'll see later. So I played D6, which is an inaccuracy. And this was a little line that I was looking at when I was going over this game, when I was prepping. It's going D5, and then both of the knights end up in the center of the board. And then you end up with this type of structure, where I don't know if it's the same name for the black side, but I know in white, when you have 2 pawns like this, it's called the Maroczy bind. And I don't know if the same name still applies here, but you get that kind of structure. I'm guessing just b6 would be a pretty solid move, and then maybe even try to challenge the bishop on this diagonal. But anyways, back to the game. I play d6. He develops a knight. I develop my knight. He develops his other knight. I develop my bishop. These are all pretty standard logical moves, I would say. And then he castles and I castle. And really now is kind of when the plans start to take form. Like, both sides have done a nice little rollout. We're both pretty happy with what's going on. We're getting developed. Both sides control spaces in the center, right? The kings have gotten away from the center of the board. A lot of the opening principles have been achieved here, even though it's a slightly weird move order. But yeah, we got a game of chess. So now my opponent plays this move, knight to g5. And as soon as I saw this move, I started thinking to myself, okay, what is this knight trying to achieve, right? He's attacking this square. This square, is there a knight jump here? Is he going to go backwards here? Is he going to go to this square? And I think right away I can eliminate most of these, right? Like, I don't think the knight's going here is not really going to accomplish anything from that square. In fact, he'll probably just get trapped for a long time if I play h6. He's not going to take here because there's no queen follow-up, so there's nothing you have to worry about as far as sacrifices go. Again, with this square, and then this square is guarded by the bishop. So then I come to the conclusion that the knight is likely going to jump to this square. Now, when I saw this move, a piece coming into my camp, one of my first thoughts was, okay, I should play h6 to get it out, right? Send it back, send it away. But the more I thought about it, I realized that this move doesn't really accomplish anything, because he wants to move this knight anyways, right? So why waste the tempo and pushing him to do something that he's already going to do? So in light of that, I play knight to d5, or d4, sorry. Just trying to improve one of my own pieces while he's in a plan of improving his. And then this knight is just nice and centralized, controlling some of the light squares where the bishop, since is in the fianchetto position, isn't controlling. So then he brings his knight where he wants to go, and then I play rook to b8 with the plan of playing b5 and trying to break the structure from the queen side. With the help of this knight now too. So he spent 2 tempo improving one piece, and I was able to improve 2 pieces in the same amount of time. So it's just something to think about if you want to go for a piece improvement idea. Just what can your opponent do in the meantime? Now, this knight is very well placed, of course, targeting the base pawn of this chain. So my bishop is going to be tied down for a while, which it doesn't mind to be because it's really a bad bishop in this position. But I will always have to have a piece looking at this now if there's a knight on this square. Okay, so he plays f4 right away. And here I spent quite a bit of time looking at this, and there's a big long line. Taking is actually the correct move, and we'll talk about that here. But I decided to go with b5. And now he plays the move f takes e. But this is a little look at the line. So what I was worried about here, right? Why I didn't take, this is something that I wanted to talk about. Why I didn't take here is because I was worried about this bishop capturing with putting more pressure on my base pawn. And just helping, I felt like I was helping white develop a piece, which I want to try to restrict the piece movement of white as much as possible. So I felt that taking here was actually a hindrance, but it turns out that it wasn't. So I decided to play b5. But if I did play e takes f, then bishop takes, and then I go for b5 anyway, which is actually the plan here. I did a little bit of computer analysis, and it turns out that if the move e3 is played to kick this knight, then this bishop actually ends up getting trapped, and this is that line. It's pretty long, and honestly, I don't know if I would have found it But this is just something to show you. And sometimes that is something that needs to get taken into consideration, is that, okay, there's a really good line here, but if you're honest with yourself, would you have really found it, right? And this is another possible plan to support the b5 push, was a6 here. But okay, so back to the game. I played b5. He takes. I took the knight, which was actually the only move here. And then I played bishop to h6, or h3, sorry, attacking the rook. And it turns out that the better square for the bishop is actually on g4 to put pressure on the e2 pawn in combination with the knight here. Which, so I unintentionally sacrificed this pawn. This wasn't a planned thing. Which it happens, honestly. Like I still drop pawns from time to time. It's not usually like a full piece anymore, but sometimes I'll miss like a couple move tactic and drop a pawn, or just miscalculate that line from there. So he comes back with the bishop, and he helps me to the square that I want to get to. Because now I have the idea of bringing the rook into the game. I can start. I can stack the queen in and just really start to hammer at this weakness on e2. So he tries to trade this bishop. Now, I think this is a good opportunity to talk about like the fianchetto position and the light squares around the king. So when I see a fianchetto bishop like this, I know that as a key defender of the king's side, just the squares around the king. So if I can get rid of that defender and keep the light square bishop of my own, then white's going to have even a harder time defending his king, because now only the queen, or if the knight gets all the way over there, can defend light squares. Because of course the dark square bishop cannot defend the light squares. So this is just kind of I wouldn't say principle, but a strategic idea. I think strategic ideas is what I'm going for here. So I decided to take with the knight, and after takes, I move the bishop back, sending the rook to the e file. Now there's a lot of space around white's king at this point. This bishop is very nice, and this bishop is very nice. So I have the bishop pair working for me here pretty well. And now I just need to bring more attackers and put this king away. So when I play rook to the e file, which the computer shows is an inaccuracy, but as far as like my logical process goes for this, there's one open file on the board right now, and I want to challenge white for it. And I saw that if he takes, I take with my queen, he can't challenge the file again because this bishop and rook haven't moved yet. So the rook can't help the queen out and challenging that file. So he takes, then I take, and then he takes here, and I drop another pawn. So at this point, it's really down to, I'm either going to checkmate white's king, or I'm very likely going to lose the endgame, being down 2 pawns at this point. But on the flip side, white has 3 pieces that has not moved this entire game, and the king is exposed. And my pieces are relatively active. So I continue the plan of trying to get piece activity. And obviously this diagonal is very weak right now. So I just want to put this bishop on this square, set up this nice little bishop-pawn combo, and control more squares around the king and blockade the central pawns. So I step out. He goes for a trade here. And now when he played this move, I was considering a queen to e3 check, or I was looking for all the checks in the position, and queen e3 was a check that was possible. but not a good move, of course, because the bishop controls that square. So then I saw that if he trades this bishop off, right, if I accept this trade, then I can play my queen e3 check, and the king has to go into the corner, and then I can step my queen up to f2. And that's exactly what happens in the game. And at this point, white resigns. Because checkmate is coming on this square in two different fashions, and there's just no way to stop it. The computer recommends queen to f1, and then bishop takes, and then a3 is actually the recommended computer move in this position, which I don't know, it's not instructive at all. I just thought it was weird. But yeah, and no matter what, white is going to checkmate, or black is going to checkmate white here. Thanks for watching. I hope that you found this information useful, and get out there and go play some games.